So good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I am delightful.
I also am delightful.
Oh, really?
Mm, you wouldn't believe it.
Fun stuff going on in the Fiddleverse.
Oh, the Fiddleverse has got all kinds of fun stuff. The Fiddleverse published Transit 2 weeks ago.
Yes, and my printed hardback copy is on its way.
Nice.
I got an email the other day that they have finished, their little scribes have finished writing it out,
Uh-huh.
and they are now sending it to me.
Their team of elite monks has
Mm.
finished.
I think they just were waiting on the one monk to illuminate the spaceships.
Right. So that's out and available on DriveThruRPG. I'll have a link in the show notes. And that's, it's going well. It's been out a week. We have sold copies. That's all that counts. Selling one was selling one more than I anticipated. So there you go.
Wait, have you only sold one? Because I know who bought it.
For the purposes of this discussion, yes, I've only sold one. So everybody go out there and validate my endeavor.
Wow, good marketing. This is really unsuccessful. It would make me feel good if you bought it.
That's right. That's right.
That's why Eeyore is going to be the new spokesperson for Disney World.
It is.
Visit the happiest place on Earth, as if it mattered.
Thanks for noticing me. But yes, this Transit is available. Link in the show notes. And if you're still talking to us after this, then go follow that link.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess we have some serious matters to talk about, don't we?
We do. And it's all because of a little thing we like to call the OSR.
Yep. One more thing the OSR has ruined in our lives.
That's right.
So, I guess I'll launch into this because I'm kind of the target of some of it.
Well, you might as well.
Yeah. I have received a number of communications regarding my mentioning of the RPG Pundit last week. We also got at least one email that I know about to the show's email.
Mm-hmm.
And a comment discussion.
Yep.
I've actually also received some communication through Patreon of people who no longer feel they can support me.
Awesome.
Yep. Because I'm going to. There is a specific person who both left a comment and emailed us. And I feel that the email and comment that were left are important enough that I have to respond because I'm accused of advocating for hate speech. I am also accused of hypocrisy, which quite frankly is not a crime because everybody in the world is guilty of hypocrisy. But I also don't think in this particular instance I have been a hypocrite. And then this leads us into an even more serious decision that had to be made regarding it.
Indeed.
So I just want to address what was sent to me and what was sent to what was commented on the show by one commenter who left their name as Jolly Red Giant.
The floor is yours.
Okay. The comment was as follows. First, Jolly Red Giant begins by quoting me from episode 66, where I said, I used to like to follow game creators on Twitter because I like to hear them talk about their game creations. Unfortunately, now I cannot follow anybody on Twitter without getting lectures about politics in there. And to be clear, I don't care about anybody's views on politics. And the tone of those conversations has also become exceedingly harsh, where it is, in fact, if you do not agree with me, you are wrong and terrible, or you hate all of this, you hate all of that. That was my quote from episode 66, which he transcribed, or she. The next one was addressing what I said in 67, claiming that I advocated for and linked to the RPG Pundit and his recently posted rant entitled Why SJW Entryists Won't Be Able to Destroy D&D, which is categorized by Jolly Red Giant as a political rant where if you disagree with him, you are wrong and stupid and terrible and hate all this or all that. I want to address those two things first, back to back. Okay. Because, look, I'm not going to defend any of RPG Pundit's opinions on absolutely anything. Okay, he has the right to his opinions. I have the right to mine. Everybody has the right to their own opinions and to speak them out. And my choice is whether I will listen or not. Okay. My issue with game creators on Twitter was not that they were talking about politics in their games or how politics was affecting gaming. They were literally talking about politics, their feelings on our current president's policies, their feelings on border control, on gun safety, on abortion rights. And obviously, I vehemently disagree with them on some cases and not others because I am a complex person and have very mixed opinions on all of these things. But that is not what I signed up for. When I say I stopped following them because of their political views, which are also expressed very harshly as an us against them mentality. That is, if you do not agree with their position on gun rights, the only reasonable conclusion to draw is that you hate children and wish them to be murdered, which is a very popular way of stating that view. It is also a disgusting view. It is a product of dichotomous thinking. It is extremely distorted, and it shows absolutely no respect for anyone who holds an opinion counter to yours. Okay? Those people who express opinions in that way, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm speaking only for myself, not Brian or Digressions and Dragons, and I am trying to keep myself under control here. As you can probably hear, my voice is getting heated. Those people who espouse that viewpoint, where they ascribe evil to their opponents and fathom no other reason why a person might hold those views, those people are intellectually bankrupt. Okay, they are devoid of rational thought. I don't want anything to do with them, especially with politics and gaming. Okay, the rant that RPG Pundit posted, it also contained a lot of that us against them garbage. I know, I listened to it. In fact, ironically, I was watching it at the moment when I got the notification that I received this, or that you notified me that we were getting this flack from Jolly Red Giant. Okay. So I'm watching this video and then that popped up. And as I'm watching the video, I agree with you 100%. It is us against them. It is hatred. And I was about to turn it off in the middle and say, I don't need this garbage. But now I have been accused of advocating for him. So I have to sit there and watch the whole thing and see what he's really saying and listen without ascribing motives to the person. Okay? And you're right. He believes that if you don't agree with him, you are terrible and you are dangerous. The only difference between him and the people on Twitter is he's not talking about his view of anything actually politically substantial. He's talking about gaming. Okay, when he's talking about politics, he's talking about politics in the game industry. The injection of politics, of social and political views into gaming. And the stuff he's talking about is actually not political. It is not your view on the policies of the US government and how it should be governed or any other world government. It is basically, I don't like how these people are changing the games I love because they are turning it into propaganda. Now, you can agree or disagree, and frankly, that's your own business. I don't care. And he actually expresses hatred for the people who are turning the games into something he does not love, which again, you can like that, you can hate that. I don't care. Okay, I personally don't see it as a very useful position to take, honestly. I don't think confronting it with hatred, saying these hateful people need to get out, is actually useful because, what good is that going to do? And that's fine, okay? But he's not talking about the politics that I was talking about. Okay, I was literally talking about someone like Jeremy Crawford thinking he's qualified to comment on American foreign policy. And he's not. He's you know what? Actually, I was going to say he's qualified to design games, but I barely believe that he's qualified for that. But that's a whole other opinion. And here's the thing. Like it or not, I live in a country, and I know some of you do not live in the same country. I live in a country where everybody is free to express their views, even hatred. And I believe very firmly in that. Because I believe firmly, in the words of Jordan Peterson, you cannot think clearly if you are not willing to risk offending someone, okay? That is very important. And the ideas, like hateful ideas, and there are genuinely hateful ideas. I am not going to say there are no hateful ideas and there are no hateful people, and that those views can become dangerous. Okay? In the last century, we've had two of them. We've had fascism and we've had communism, and they killed millions and millions of people. There are hateful, dangerous ideas in the world. The idea of some people are ruining a game about pretend elves, not actually dangerous. But even so, the only way to deal with hateful and dangerous ideas is to force them into a market of ideas where other people can listen to all the alternative viewpoints and each person decide for themselves what is right. If we only go with the popular opinion and we quash any other discussion, we will go back to a time when you could not even discuss interracial marriage because it was such a disgusting taboo to the majority of Americans, or gay marriage, okay? Those things used to be forbidden topics because they were considered disgusting. And the only thing that allowed them to thrive was the fact that at the end of the day, people could discuss them, they could protest for them, and they had to go out and show the world so that gradually minds would be changed. Okay, that's the power of confronting bad ideas with good. So that said, everybody has the right to listen to their own ideas, to whatever ideas they want to listen to. I have the right to listen to the ideas I want to listen to, good, bad, or indifferent, and make my own judgment calls, as does Jolly Red Giant and everybody else. Okay? I firmly believe that. And if you don't believe that, well, I am very sorry for you, because it actually impedes your ability to think rationally, to tell good ideas from bad, and to grow as a person. All of that aside, and believe I had a much longer speech that I have cut down here, because I think this issue is a gigantic issue. It is a very dangerous issue. It's a scary issue. And I could go on about it for 2 hours. Okay. That said, now the rest of the comment goes on. To be fair, I don't think this was up at the time the Digressions of Dragons episode was recorded, but it's not like this is an unusual position for the RPG Pundit, or the first time he decided to go off on a politics tangent, which again, I'm going to say, I don't think it was tangential to what he publishes at all. But you can disagree. The comment then goes on to say, I think Scott and I would disagree a lot on politics. Oh, very likely. But the way he generally presents himself would be absolutely welcome to sit and play my games with me. Whereas RPG Pundit comes off as everything Scott describes as opposed about social media, only with right-wing leanings instead of left-wing leanings. I would disagree. Actually, if you know more about RPG Pundit's views, you'll notice that he's a very strong mix of conservative and liberal, and he's not afraid to show that. But again, that's neither here nor there. Okay? What is important is this part. I think Scott and I would disagree a lot on politics, but the way he presents himself, he would be welcome to sit and play games with me, whereas the RPG Pundit wouldn't. Fine and dandy. That's very nice of you. Thank you. Except for the email. Given the and this is where the email starts. Given the show's decision to advocate for the hate speech of the RPG Pundit, this is where I get off. Unsubscribing from this podcast and GM Word of the Week, and won't be back to the Angry GM. I had hoped you folks could keep to your attitude of keeping politics out of gaming, but clearly that's not the case. Good day, gentlemen. Now, what this shows is that this Jolly Red Giant person, when he says, I would be welcome to sit and play at his table because of the way I present myself, even though we disagree, is that it's not true. Because the moment my politics actually were exposed, he has walked away from me completely, okay? So, Jolly Red Giant, I am only welcome at your table insofar as I shut my mouth and don't disagree with you. Well, I don't want to play at your table. You can have your table, I will have mine. Okay. Occasionally in my games, political things do come up. They sometimes cause problems. They sometimes cause disagreements. It doesn't happen often, but gaming is a form of art. Okay. And it's a form of drama and it's a form of storytelling. And so some of it is going to be a product of the culture you're in and the important ideas of the age. Okay. And I'll give you some examples. I will give two quick examples. I have had 2 incidents in my game where I have included non-heterosexual characters as NPCs in my game world. Okay? Basically gay characters. And I myself am bisexual, but that qualifier should not be required. anybody can have an opinion on anything. Okay. In one instance, I was called out by a player for including that because he felt that it was disgusting and uncomfortable morally. Okay, that his own personal beliefs were that homosexuality is amoral. And he is right to have those beliefs. I've confronted those people in my life, all of my life. I'm still friends with many of them. I'm actually still friends with that guy. Because we sat down and we talked it out, and he didn't know I was bisexual, so that was the first part of the discussion. It's like, I gotta let you know this. And after we had a frank discussion about it, I didn't change his belief. He still thinks it's amoral, but he also thinks that, just because I'm making a bad decision in my own life doesn't mean, in his view, doesn't mean that I can't be his friend. And that's fine, And he doesn't judge me, and he judges me a little bit, but we all have friends we think are doing things that are bad for them. You have the friend who's constantly overeating and then complaining that they don't like the way they look. And, as a friend, at one point you say to them, hey, I notice you complain a lot, yada, yada, yada. And then after that, you shut up because that's as far as you go with a friend. But you're still watching them make what you consider to be a bad decision, but you still like them and they still like you. And that's it. Okay. I did agree that I would never have a homosexual character show any interest or flirt with that person at all, which I don't do in my games anyway. There's almost no sexuality in my games. It was just a relationship thing. And we found a compromise that we could live with, and we remained friends, even though he thinks that my lifestyle is inherently amoral, and I disagree with him. Okay? That is an example of someone being welcome at the table despite the disagreement. Okay, not, well, you're gay, I'm walking away from your table now. Done. The second instance was one in which I got in trouble on the other side. I had a gay character who was hiding the fact that they were gay because they were a noble person and a nobleman, and they were the son of a nobleman. And, the nobleman was obviously very concerned about carrying on the family line and appearing strong and all those things that the lord of a land is concerned about. And his son was in that respect a disappointment because he was homosexual. Now, I'm not saying that makes the son bad or anything, obviously, but this is the reality of the society that, the game existed in. That's just the way it is. Well, I had a unknown to me gay person at my table who found that very offensive because I was depicting a homosexual person as oppressed and giving a fair shake to the father and the son were both presented as sympathetic characters. The son, obviously, he is in love and he wants to have this relationship, and he's ignoring his duty to his family, which is important. The father, of course, he feels he has a duty to the kingdom, and that his son will not be able to carry on if his son can't get married and produce an heir, and also kind of humiliates and calls into question the strength of the family. Neither of them were bad people. They were just two different sides of the coin. And I had a person walk away from my table because they didn't like the fact that I gave equal treatment to both sides. To say, yeah, but the father's not evil. That's not an inherently evil viewpoint. It's like, you may disagree personally. I obviously do. I don't sympathize with the father at all. But in the reality of that culture, it's a way of looking at homosexuality in a bigger picture. Like, in terms of a culture and in terms of what the role of marriage is in culture and what the role of nobility and authority are in that culture, and the person who espouses that is not evil. So I actually kept a fairly fundamentalist religious person who was opposed to my own personal lifestyle at the table, even though they couldn't agree with what I'm doing. And I had to watch a gay person walk away, even though my views were much stronger, much more aligned with the gay person. So, and that's the difference between what Jolly Red Giant here is saying and what I espouse. Okay, tolerance isn't, as long as you shut up and don't tell me you disagree with me, you're welcome in my home. Tolerance is, oh, you disagree with me? Well, let's still play games, and we'll both avoid that viewpoint. Done and done. Okay. But this gets to the most serious of the accusations. Okay. And that is the advocation that this show, and me specifically, have advocated for hate speech. Okay? That is not true. That is a spurious accusation. Okay? I have not in any way endorsed the hateful opinions that RPG Pundit sometimes espouses. In fact, I specifically skirted around the issue, and not skirted around the issue. I was very clear that I understand this person is a divisive figure, that he holds viewpoints that some find offensive, and that he has gotten into trouble in the gaming community. And then said, I personally have been listening to his views on game design and found them interesting. And here is what I found. I neither suggested that anybody go and watch his entire back catalog. In fact, I was very careful to say he's an offensive figure and you might not want to watch his back catalog. I did not repeat any of his hateful speech or what we're going to consider his hateful speech, because there's a discussion even to be had there. The link was there, and I feel that anybody can go and watch the link, and as soon as you get to a point where he's spewing hateful opinions that bother you, you can just shut it off. Done. Just like I did, or usually do. And that's the end of it. Okay? In order to advocate for something, you actually have to make a call to action. Okay? Just merely pointing out that someone who has said something hateful has also said something else that is worthwhile is not advocating for hate speech. And to be clear, I consider this accusation to be a slanderous accusation. If this goes any further, I and Angry Games Incorporated will have to take legal action if it begins to affect me in any way. So I'm taking a hardline stance there. I will not allow it's not a slanderous accusation. It is a it's defamation. You know, there's slander and there's libel, depending on whether it's spoken or whether it's published, yada yada yada. But this is a libelous and defamatory accusation. And if it starts getting spread, I'm going to go after it, which is why I have to respond. Okay. That being said, there is a very dangerous, very dichotomous, very irrational viewpoint behind this accusation. And that is, if someone espouses a hateful idea, then all of their ideas can therefore be labeled as hateful. Okay, the idea that the RPG Pundit, because he has expressed some views that I find horrible. I do find some of his views horrible. I actually think in some cases he talks more sense than some people want to admit, but that's just the way I lean, you know. But I do not believe that a person espousing a bad idea is also incapable of espousing good ideas. What this is a form of an ad hominem argument, okay? Where, and it goes back to the whole, like, I used to smoke. And when I used to smoke, I used to tell everybody who said anything about it, you know, don't ever start. Like a kid would say, oh, you smoke? I'd be like, yeah, don't ever start. It's horrible. And you always get that whole hypocrisy argument, like, well, you started. And it's like, yeah, I did. That's why I know how horrible it is. And I'm now an addict and I can't stop. Okay? The idea is that someone making a bad decision does not taint absolutely everything they say. Every idea must be considered separately and on its own merits. Okay? Because actually there's two problems. One is that nobody is 100% perfect. That is, nobody's every word and thought is 100% pure. If I go back and run through everything any one person has said, I'm sure I can find a place where they have said something that is hateful or at least disagreeable. Because everybody is also capable of hate. All human beings are capable of both good and evil inside. Okay? You cannot expect that level of perfection from anybody. Now, if on balance, that most of the stuff they say is evil and hateful, then yeah, then I will go ahead and say that's a bad person and probably is better left cut out of me listening to them. But that's everybody's own choice to make. If you find that there's something of value in something a game designer says, even one who otherwise espouses bad opinions that you don't like, by all means take that valuable idea and leave the rest just to sit there and, you know, die unloved and unexamined. That's what you do with a bad idea. You let it get beaten up in the free market of ideas, or you leave it to die lamented and unexamined and unthought and unspread. Okay? I don't buy into that binary. And I think anybody who does buy into that binary is, again, an intellectually bankrupt person, because they cannot consider individual ideas on their own merits. They simply throw a label at it. In fact, these are two forms of thinking that are frequently identified as distorted thinking. Like if you go through cognitive behavioral therapy, they one of the things they teach you is how to identify distortions in your own thinking, because those distortions can lead you to beating yourself up and taking things out on yourself really harshly. And among them are dichotomous thinking, that is seeing everything as all one way or all the other way. And the other one is labeling, where you slap something with a label rather than considering it intellectually. You use the label as a shorthand to dismiss it. Okay? Those are bad forms of thinking, and a psychiatrist will teach you not to do them. I know, because I had a psychiatrist teach me not to do them because I used to apply them to myself. Okay? They are toxic when they are in your own brain, whether you use them against yourself or other people, and they are toxic in the wider world. So therefore, Jolly Red Giant, your arguments, your accusation is spurious. I do not want to sit at your table, and I do not feel I would be welcome at your table, because I would only be welcome at your table insofar as I shut up. And you are suffering from some severe distorted thinking, and therefore I have no desire to have a conversation with you. I'm kind of happy to let you find the door for yourself and walk out it, And I hope someday you can figure things out and work it out. Thus finishes my response to Jolly. And also, anybody else who holds the same views as those I just quoted, same thing. Please feel free, at least for my work, because again, I'm not speaking for Brian or Digressions and Dragons. That's why he has not spoken at all. I am doing this entirely myself. This is for me, for my work as Angry Games Incorporated, the Angry GM, whatever. If you hold these views and actually feel that this is an accurate assessment of what I have done and how I behave, please show yourself the door. I don't need you, and I don't want you. I'm sorry. Response done.
Okay.
Yeah, let me tell you, it took a week to figure out how to do that without just simply being enraged.
Right.
Because I am enraged by this. And it did bring up a bigger issue.
Yeah. There are a number of things going on. You have, you tell me when to stop talking about it. But
Sure.
You have some serious issues going on.
Mm-hmm.
Things that
Serious
don't have
health
anything.
issues.
Yes, things that don't have anything to do with what we've just talked about.
Right. That is all aside from
Right.
Yes. And one of the things, I'll go ahead and say it so you don't have to.
Okay.
Among other issues, one of which is sleep apnea, which is preventing me from sleeping at all. So for the last month and a half, I am functioning as if I was not getting any sleep at all. I am extremely sleep deprived. But I am also going back into treatment for depression, which is partially connected to the whole I can't sleep at all, and therefore my brain is really screwed up, because sleep is actually important for your brain.
Yeah,
your brain
surprising.
really needs it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, once again, because I do suffer from occasional anxiety issues, I will also be treated for anxiety. Currently, it will just be talk therapy, no medication, because we're going to give the treatment for the sleep condition time to work, and see if with the additional energy I can make some other positive changes in my life. And I have gone through serious depressions before. Some very serious depressions, in point of fact.
You're going to do some of that good old DBT.
DBT?
Dialectical Behavioral Therapy.
Oh, okay. I hadn't heard that one.
Yeah.
Is that that's talk therapy, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's exactly what it is.
Got it. Okay. Yep. That's basically all it is.
Okay.
Yep. So, and right. I don't say any of this as a play for sympathy.
No.
I say this because people deserve to know.
But what we have here is a situation that is not good for you.
Well, that is a part of it.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a lot of other pressures on you and your time and your performance.
Mm-hmm.
And you have taken steps to eliminate things that are not crucial to your daily functioning.
Right, temporarily.
Mm-hmm.
And things like running games and stuff.
Yes. Mm. And sitting here as your friend rather than your co-host, your friend says to himself, "I do not wish to cause my friend any further complications or difficulties, or add additional stress to his life, or make things more difficult for him to accomplish the goals that he needs to accomplish, as well as the goals he wants to accomplish." That has led me to a conclusion that this show has to end. And this is my decision. From the start, the agreement that you and I have had about Digressions and Dragons is that if either one of us genuinely says this show has to stop, then the show has to stop.
Right. I think the agreement was that we both said we were doing this for fun.
Mm-hmm.
And when it ceased being fun,
yeah.
when it was more work than fun,
mm-hmm.
it was no longer worth it.
Yep. So, yes, this is the end of Digressions and Dragons as an ongoing podcast series. And largely the decision is mine. So if you want to be upset and angry at somebody for that decision, then you will be upset and angry at me.
Well, I don't think you need to take 100% of the blame there, because in point of fact, if I were thinking clearer right now, mm-hmm. I would have had the courage to simply say that I think I need to get off the show.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is that what I have been doing is hemming and hawing over it, because this issue with the RPG Pundit has highlighted something that I have been feeling for some time now with this show.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am such a strong advocate for free speech, and feel that there are actual problems in the gaming community. And you and I have both, we have retreated from social media.
Mm-hmm.
To get away from certain things.
Correct.
And we have retreated into our own personal communities and bubbles, okay, where we can enjoy ourselves more freely without having to deal with that stuff. And Digressions and Dragons was one of those things. Okay. And the problem is that people do not hear the stuff that doesn't get on the show.
Right.
Okay. You and I have had a number of conversations before and even during the show that got cut out,
mm-hmm.
about whether it was safe to discuss a certain topic, or whether it would bring us undue stress and, criticism and, comments like the Jolly Red Giants and start fights and whatever, because we genuinely just want to avoid that and we want our hobby to be fun.
Right.
Okay? I was even, before we brought up the RPG Pundit, I was actually hemming and hawing about whether I even wanted to discuss him. And that discussion was actually a week late because I was afraid to bring it up the previous week. I don't know if I even mentioned that to you.
Mm-mm.
But it was something that I finally put in the show notes a week later, even though I knew that it could potentially cause some problems. And the thing is, it is not fun for me to feel as if you and I cannot converse freely. If we have to spend many of our conversations walking on eggshells and afraid to just go wherever the conversation takes us and explore whatever ideas we want to explore, then this conversation is not worthwhile to me. Then I might as well just go back on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because I can get that there. And so it's something that I have been struggling with for a while now, is the feeling of what I'm going to call an intellectual dishonesty. Okay, I feel as if I am, shying away from things. Now, I'm not saying that I want to discuss, like politics. I don't want to talk about Trump and border control and gun rights or anything like that. I don't want a political show. But I do want to talk about cultural issues in gaming sometimes. And you and I struggled with that when we started talking about what the gaming community.
Right.
And we started having a discussion about what the gaming community does and does not mean online. And it's actually kind of hard to have that discussion without looking at the gigantic chasm that is running down the middle of the gaming community online right now. Because there is a chasm. There are two sides. And they do not want to have anything to do with each other anymore. Okay. And it's visible, I know, because over the last few years, I have watched people I used to be friends with who are now on the other side of the chasm, who are literally calling me some pretty horrible things that they never would have said before. So I know that chasm is there, and it's hard to skirt around it. And I don't like skirting around it. If we're going to discuss the online community, well, let's have the guts to discuss the online community. Otherwise, I feel intellectually dishonest. So that's something that I was struggling with, and when this came up, that all came back to the forefront, and it led me to a level of frustration where it's like, do I even want to do this anymore? I don't want to have this conversation. If I have to worry that someone's going to be offended and then go on a crusade against me, then this conversation just isn't worth having. You know, which I feel is, I mean, sadly, it's a bit of a defeatist attitude. It's like, well, you know, but you know what? It's gaming. It's not worth it. If I were out there crusading for, you know, something that actually had significance, I would feel differently. I would want to speak up. But this is just pretend elves. So I don't care enough about the issues to get into fights over pretend elves, you know?
Right.
So that's where I was at. And unfortunately, I also felt obligated to you. And I felt obligated to the community that we have built up, you know, the fans of this show, to keep it going, despite the fact that the episodes were becoming, you know, and not every episode. Mostly we did have fun. That's the sad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly we did have fun. But when we hit these roadblocks, it kind of made me quite, like, why are we, well, I'm still happy to talk to you. It's just I don't know what we're gaining letting the whole world listen in anymore, except that we can't talk freely, you know?
Yeah.
I can have an hour conversation with you every week if I want to.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you'd be amenable to that also.
Definitely. But the need to record it is, it's not.
Well,
helpful.
the effect of letting the world listen to the conversation just exposes us to stress and keeps us from talking.
Yeah.
You know, so that's...
And as I said, my concerns were more about, I think, your health and general happiness than anything else. And, you know, with everything going on in your life, you don't need the extra stress, whether that stress is coming from, you know, the ability to discuss things you want to discuss, or whether it's coming from just general time sink and effort sink, or, you know, whatever that is. You don't need it at present, and I am loath to force it upon you. So we're just going to be done.
And I appreciate that. And yeah, and the only reason I'm going any further with offering further explanation is because the stress and everything else that's going on in my life is hopefully temporary.
Mm-hmm.
And if things work out the way the doctors think they will, the measure of it is weeks, not months or years.
Right.
And I'm hoping for that. But at the same time, it is very unlikely that I'm going to turn around and come back and say, you know what? I'm better now. Let's jump back on the podcast recording converse thing.
Right.
You know, let's do it again.
This is and only ever was an experiment to see what it, you know, see if it would work. And I would say it worked pretty well for the listener. I don't know that it worked terribly well for both of us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's time to be done. I would, however, like to end everything on and I hesitate to use this phrase exactly, but on a happier note.
No, that's fair.
I would love for you to tell us the story of your book as it stands currently. Yes, as it stands currently. Like the 300 that went missing.
Oh, yeah. I felt like we had recorded that conversation. Then I realized that was my Patreon live chat or my Discord live chat.
Right.
So, yeah, this is actually, I guess it's kind of a funny story.
It is kind of.
I mean, you have to laugh at it because what else can you do?
Right.
So okay. Background is obviously I published a book, kickstarted it, about 2,500 people, well, 2,200 people, And about a third of them are international backers. So in January, we finally got the books, and I handed the books and the money for shipping over to Third Act Publishing, run by my good friend Jim McClure. And he started shipping them out to people. And obviously that has been fraught with disaster already, and I think we've discussed some of those previous disasters. So we started to get reports as time went on that some people had not yet received their books. And Jim and I set a date. We said for international backers on March 11th, which was a couple of Mondays ago now, on March 11th, we would put out a survey and ask, okay, who still hasn't gotten their books in the wider world outside of the United States? And those books we would replace. And we figured, we're figuring that we should probably have somewhere between 10 and 20 missing books at that point, because you figure about 2% of all your shipments are just going to go missing. And that's what it was with the domestic shipping. We lost about 30 of them. No, we lost about 15 to 20 of them. So fine. So that weekend, the weekend before March 11th, Jim and I are at a convention. We're at GaryCon. And actually I kind of glossed over that story a little bit. Jim hadn't actually made it to GaryCon yet. And I got a call from him because he had a serious family emergency.
Right.
A serious family emergency of wow. This is funny too. Apparently, if you say certain words in combination with the word emergency, your phone's little Siri personal assistant thinks you're calling for help. She just started telling me, I can contact emergency services if you need me to.
Jeez.
Okay.
Thanks, overly helpful Siri.
Right? She won't do a web search while I'm driving, even though I'm on hands-free, but she'll call emergency services if I utter the word.
Right.
So anyway. So it was a serious enough emergency that it was of the sort of, get on a plane and fly to Phoenix to be with your family.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say any more than that because obviously it's his personal issue. But
right.
So he's gone. He doesn't even make it to the convention. He flies away. March 11th comes. I don't want to bother him, because obviously, he has the emergency. We are in touch a little bit, so I kind of know what's going on, but not everything.
Sure.
So I throw out the survey myself. I put the survey together. I put it up online and say, hey, if you haven't received your book, if you're in international waters, hey, let me know and give me your information so that we can start to investigate what happened. Within a couple hours, there were 200 names on the list.
Ouch.
And within 24 hours, there were over 350 names.
Double ouch.
Yeah, and this is a little bit concerning because we only sent out about 700 packages overseas. About 1/3 of the 2,200.
Right.
So, and for the people who have responded to the survey within 24 hours, I have to assume that there's a bunch more who have not yet seen the survey, and there's some people who don't watch Kickstarter updates at all, so there's more missing. So, okay, this is kind of a big issue. I better shut this all down and put out a post. So I did, and I put out a post. I said, basically, look, there is obviously a big issue here. It looks like at least half of the books we sent overseas have not arrived yet. My general impression is, okay, international shipping takes longer than we assumed, and we just hadn't given enough time, right? But it's still worthy of investigation, and we sent them out via FedEx. So the following Monday, this is the 18th now. Jim contacts me. He says he's back in town. Things are resolved with his family. And he contacted FedEx, and he found the books.
Oh, good.
Yes. They are currently sitting in a I shouldn't say currently, at the time on March 18th, they were sitting in a Transportation Safety Administration warehouse in Ohio. Waiting for someone to prove that it was not an international drug shipment.
Okay, I have questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. How is it that Game Angry may have become some sort of drug delivery system?
Well, okay. It's a it's a little bit so there's what happens is the entire shipment touched off a few what they call red flags. Okay, it followed a few patterns that are consistent with smuggling of things out of the country.
Oh.
Okay. So one of the things that was a problem was that we only sent out stuff internationally, which is unusual for a United States business. Normally, United States businesses will ship stuff both domestically and internationally. So if they see you only shipping stuff overseas, they get concerned. Now, the reason that we were only shipping stuff internationally is because we used FedEx for the international shipments and the Postal Service for domestic shipments. So FedEx did not see the domestic shipments. So that was problem number one.
Mm-hmm.
Problem number two is that Jim, when he formed his business, he used to have a partner. And his partner left the business to go and take care of his family and other things. So it was an amicable split. But his partner left the business, and Jim has since moved. Okay. So there were two addresses on record for his company when it was originally founded. Jim's old address and his partner's address. None of the books were shipped from either of those two addresses because, well, the partner is no longer involved in the company, and Jim has moved since then. So there's a new address. Unfortunately, well, and here's the thing, Jim did all of the filings he is supposed to do in order to, report to the state that his address had changed in the federal government. Unfortunately, the TSA, when they were investigating this, they took a very slapdash approach and simply pulled the initial business filing from years ago for Third Act Publishing and said, this doesn't match. Okay. So now they had a pile of envelopes that were being shipped to a variety of countries, but none in the US, coming from a false address. So you can imagine how that touches off some red flags. There were a few other little inconsistencies. One of the biggest things is that if you do a lot of international shipping, in order to expedite the process, you register with the TSA as a known shipper. And you tell them, this is my business. These are the addresses I ship from. This is what I ship.
It's definitely not drugs.
Right. Yeah. It's like, what do you ship? Not drugs. We primarily ship to Colombia. I guess you wouldn't ship to Colombia, would you?
No, I did.
Okay. Whatever. I don't know where you ship drugs to.
Europe, apparently.
Yeah, apparently Europe. So anyway. So yeah, there were a number of red flags, none of which by themselves were, like, obviously each individual red flag was silly. But added up all together, it does create a pattern. And I can fault them. I really can fault them here.
I certainly would.
Now, here's the thing. They can't open the packages because right now all they have is suspicion. They don't actually have reasonable cause. And in the United States, you can't violate someone's privacy or conduct a search without their permission unless you can get a court order or show reasonable cause that a crime is currently being committed. And this doesn't qualify. So they had to get in touch with Jim. 3 problems with that. Okay? Number one, you'll note they did not have any proper contact information for the company.
Got that.
Right. Number 2, they didn't have a phone number for a variety of amusing reasons of their own, which I will not go into because it has to do with how Jim because he uses his phone for both personal stuff and business and does not want to publish his personal phone number.
Right.
And when you're a corporation or a company and you publish your information, it becomes public record. So, he was concealing his phone number so that, people couldn't find him. And, what was it? Number 2. And number 3, Jim had currently been out of town. Though this, obviously, they seized this stuff in, like the first week of February. So that doesn't really apply here. They say they called FedEx. FedEx says they never heard from them. And there's a specific representative that they said they called, which is also a representative that Jim has worked with. And the representative said, no, the TSA never called us. So in the event that they can't get in touch with someone, though, what they do is they throw everything in a pile and wait for someone to come looking for it so they can ask the right questions.
Mm.
So finally, the survey touched off enough red flags that we went looking for the packages, found them in the TSA, and that Jim and his Jim's employee, they had to go down to the TSA office. They spent about 4 hours there being questioned by an agent. I'm not sure I'm supposed to share the name of the agent or anything like that. So, there was an agent and they had to go through an interview with him. And ultimately they gave permission to the TSA to open a number of packages at random and examine the contents, which they then repackaged. And the TSA was satisfied that they are in fact books and not drugs. And then Jim stayed there and watched them clear the entire shipment to make sure that it was then heading to its next leg of the journey.
Right.
So now the sad thing is the TSA part is the first leg of an international shipment's journey. It goes, so you send it to the carrier sends, reports it to the TSA, and then the TSA can pull it if they want to. Then it goes to customs, and customs can decide whether it's allowed to leave the country or not. Then it goes on airplanes and boats and wherever it's going to its destination port, where it goes through, that country's customs, and then it goes to the ground carrier to complete its journey. So as of the first week of February, they were stopped in the first leg of their journey until we went looking for them.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay.
At this point, Jim has accused me of being cursed.
I can see why. All right, so I still have questions.
Sure, by all means.
On Kickstarter, they have that little section at the bottom that says risks and whatever it says there.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Did you write down possibly seized by the TSA as drugs?
No. No, I did not.
It seems odd to me.
I have learned that there's a lot of things I neglected. Layout artist might run off to China in the middle of a project.
Mm-hmm.
Computer might burst into flames while typing book. Book might be seized by TSA as possible drug shipment. Yeah, these are risks and challenges I didn't note.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. All right. Just checking. Just checking. Question number 2.
Yeah.
Anytime I've ever sent anything overseas, and that includes Canada, because apparently there is a massive ocean between us and Canada.
Mm-hmm.
There is a label that has to go on the package that says what's in the package.
Yes.
Was that on your books?
Yep.
Was the TSA unable to read that label?
Well, the TSA, in general, they have discovered in their years of service since 2001, they have discovered that sometimes people are not entirely honest, particularly criminals.
Now, wait a minute. That doesn't follow from the information you've given me. Because you've told me there's a form you can say, we don't ship drugs on, and they believe you.
Yes. Yes, that is true. And in that case, it's kind of it's like a vetting process where they actually, and more importantly, what it does mean is that then your information is on file.
Mm-hmm.
So that if the TSA does need to reach you regarding a shipment, they have a fast track to do that.
Uh-huh.
That's really what the registration does. It puts you on the TSA's radar.
Mm-hmm.
And as a general rule, criminals will not put themselves on the TSA's radar.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they're waiting for that form that says, yes, we ship drugs illegally. and that's the one they're going to go over.
Now, the thing is, this has happened, though.
I know. It's the scary part.
There's actually a very funny story. This goes back to, I guess it must have been 2006 or 2007. I think it was either Louisiana or Alabama. The state of Louisiana or Alabama, whichever one it was, the state in question, was they were lamenting the fact that they were losing sales tax revenue, which, you know, is the tax you pay on anything you purchase for use in the state, right?
Right.
They were losing sales tax revenue because drug dealers, although they were selling tangible personal property for consumption in the state, were not collecting sales tax from their customers and then remitting it to the state government. Okay. So they decided that they would, you know, attempt to collect the sales tax.
Okay.
And you know how, like, if you buy certain things like cigarettes, the sales taxes are actually prepaid on them.
Yes.
And there's a sticker that you put on there, or a stamp in some cases. So what you do is you go to the state office, you know, this Department of Revenue or whatever department handles it in your state, and you buy these stickers or you buy these stamps for the price of the sales tax, and then you affix the stamps to whatever merchandise you are covering the sales tax on,
Right.
so that you can sell it, and then it, even though you didn't charge the sales tax at the time of the sale, or you do, but you keep it yourself, because the sales tax already prepaid. So they said, you know, that's a good idea. What if we just sell these stamps to drug dealers so that they can stamp their drugs as having the sales taxes prepaid? Seems reasonable, right?
Sure.
Now, here's the funny thing. Okay?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of funny things now that happen as a result. First of all, as the state, you might be compelled to decide to have some police on hand so that if anybody shows up for these stamps, you can just arrest them, because anybody who sells up for prepaid sales tax stamps on, you know, illegal drugs is ipso facto selling illegal drugs. You know, sort of, they have admitted the crime.
Right.
And then you can just, you know, take them in for investigation. But the state of Alabama or Louisiana, or whichever it was, didn't actually do this, because the Department of Revenue, they don't care if you're making money legally or illegally or whatever. They just want their sales tax. So it was completely independent of any police organization. Now, if you are a criminal, you might look at this whole process and assume, if I go down there, they're going to assume that I'm a criminal and arrest me. This is a trap. I'm not going to do this. And so you won't show up, which most of the illegal drug dealers in the state did. They didn't show up because they felt it was a trap. But some did. And they got their stamps, paid their sales tax, walked away, stamped their drugs. Everything was fine. So, yeah, so there are some criminals who will actually just, you know, if you give them half a chance, admit to being criminals.
Awesome.
And if you're a tax department, yeah, you might as well try and see if some of them will pay their taxes. You know?
At least they can't get them on tax charges.
Well, famously, that's what they ultimately got Al Capone on. He wasn't declaring all his illegal income.
Yeah.
I actually have a lot of fun facts about criminal tax law.
Of course you do.
So, well, for example, if you are running an illegal business, okay, you are allowed to deduct from your income for tax purposes all of the expenses of your illegal business. So if you have a cell phone that you use to conduct illegal stuff on, you can deduct that as an expense as long as you declare the illegal business. So, you know, you put like, you know, racketeer or protection services contractor on your tax return and declare the income that you've collected and pay the appropriate taxes, and you're fine. You are not allowed, however, to deduct any expenses that are in and of themselves crimes. So if I pay a bribe to the police, I am legally not allowed to consider that a tax deduction. Only expenses incurred in the normal course of legal business are allowed to be deducted, even if the actual business is illegal. On top of that, though, there is a special tax law for drug dealers, where I kid you not, this is in the Internal Revenue Code. Whereas most illegal businesses, like let's say I'm selling like stolen stereos. Okay, I buy them from a guy, because they fell off the back of a truck or whatever.
Sure,
I buy them from a guy and then I sell them at retail. I'm allowed to deduct the cost of buying those stereos from the guy.
Mhm.
But you are not allowed to deduct the cost of illegal drugs. So, which is called, by the way, cost of goods sold. You're allowed to deduct the cost of the goods that you're selling because it costs you money to get them.
Sure,
Okay,
theoretically.
Drug dealers are not allowed to deduct the cost of goods sold from their income.
Well, okay.
See, and you thought tax law wasn't fun.
Okay, I have one last remaining question about this whole story.
Sure.
Does the TSA not own a drug and or book sniffing dog?
You know, that's a very interesting question too. But if I understand the law correctly, even having a dog sniff around the envelopes could be construed as an illegal search.
Interesting.
I'm not 100% sure. I am not a criminal lawyer.
No?
I'm not a lawyer of any kind, actually.
Oh,
as it
okay.
turns out. Yeah, I'm not a lawyer. But I believe that is the issue where they cannot simply have the dog sniff around it. And there have been a number of amusing Supreme Court cases because if you listen to Supreme Court transcripts, by the way, they're hilarious too. I love the Supreme Court. They think stuff. They make jokes all the time. I remember there was one case they had. It was an advertising group, that had used dues collected from members of this agency, or from members. It's a, what do you call it, an industry group?
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, it was a group of people who sold mushrooms in grocery stores,
Okay.
right? And there was a case involving dues that these people were paying to this industry organization that were used to pay for advertising, and there was some issue with the advertising and liability and whatever. And this gets all the way up to the Supreme Court. And I think it was Sandra Day O'Connor, this again is years ago, there was a conversation, and one of the justices said, wait a minute, so what you're telling me is that you have this industry group, or he was just clarifying. He's like, so if we're to understand, there is this industry group of mushroom growers in the United States that have pooled their money for various industry services. And Sandra Day O'Connor, on court record, and it's in the transcript, leans over and says, well, surely it's an underground organization. So that's
Very
the seriousness with which the highest court in the land takes this stuff. But there have actually been some interesting cases and there was an argument between them about using infrared photography to take a picture of a building, a residence, and seeing like heat lamps through the walls because you could see the heat generated
Mm-hmm.
in order to determine that they were growing marijuana. And then they went off on this long tangent of, well, what if a police officer walked up near the building and held up a thermometer? Would that be an illegal search? Because the heat is escaping the building. Can you search the heat coming out of the building? It's so there's a lot of case law about what does and does not constitute an illegal search and seizure. So I don't know. That's probably why they didn't have the dogs just sniff around. Also, it turns out drug sniffing dogs and bomb sniffing dogs not actually very good at finding drugs and bombs.
Great.
They are really good at finding sausages, though.
Yeah.
It turns out.
Okay.
I can't remember where I read that. I was reading a recent article about it, and it turns out that dogs aren't actually that great at this.
Your national security at work, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I think it's just another one of those things where they have the dog sniff around and then they watch the suspected criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like as soon as the suspected criminal's like, no, the fender's fine. Don't have the dog sniff the fender. It's cool. They're like, oh, okay. Can we take a look under your fender, sir? I mean, that's one of the
interesting.
major...
It's interesting the accent with which you portrayed that particular individual.
That's my criminal accent. I come from New York. All my criminals talk like that.
Ah, okay.
They all talk like that. Hey, get the dog away from my fender. There's nothing wrong with the fender. It's okay. I talk like my grandfather and my Uncle Nicky, so it's not racist because it's me.
Your Uncle Nicky.
My Uncle Nicky.
Yeah. Was he little Nicky or big Nicky?
There were a lot of Nickies.
Oh, okay.
I think he was medium Nicky.
Medium Nicky. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair enough.
Full legal disclosure, because I know the NSA is now listening to this conversation. Nobody in my family has ever been proven to be connected to any criminal organizations, organized, disorganized, or otherwise.
That's right. No proof whatsoever.
Right. No convictions.
That's what counts.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's funny, there were never any witnesses.
Yeah.
Strange how that works out.
So the books are now wending their way across the ocean, presumably.
Yeah, supposedly.
All right.
Who the hell? Actually, Jim is checking up on them every couple of days now. So he's tracking them to make sure they go through customs and get where they're going. Obviously, we can't track every one of the 400, but we can at least spot check and make sure that they've all passed certain milestones.
That's a, I'm glad they caught those to make sure they were not drugs and didn't say, for example, get the other half of the shipment.
Right? Wait, what's wrong with you?
Well,
but this is great now because I can add another government agency with initials that has somehow suspected me of serious crime.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is not the first time this has happened.
You've got a little collection up on the wall of notices and things, don't you? And here's the time the FBI got on me about the spaghetti incident. And then here's
I did have armed agents detain me and my parents in our home and question me for an hour over something I said on the internet. I've been asked. They asked me, and this was years ago too. This was about 2010.
Mm-hmm.
I have been asked not to discuss the incident or identify the agency in question.
Mm-hmm.
I will say this: they were very friendly. They were very polite.
Mm-hmm.
They were, of course, very stern.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't come to the door and they, had guns pointed at us and were screaming or anything. They asked a lot of questions. They asked for printouts of some things. And because I cooperated, nothing ever came of it.
Uh-huh.
And they were entirely right because out of context, it did look like I may have issued a threat against another government agency to attack people.
Oh.
Okay. Out of context.
Out of context.
It did look like...
Yeah, way out of context, huh?
It did look like I had issued threats against the IRS.
Oh.
And that there isn't... They get a lot of threats. They take those seriously.
Mm-hmm.
IRS agents, they get hit a lot.
Especially from accountants.
The sad thing is we're pretty much on their side. We just try to help make sure everybody pays their taxes and that's it.
Uh-huh.
We're not their enemy.
All right.
It's the people who don't employ accountants who are trying to get away with. Actually, that's not true. There are plenty of shady accountants. Not that I was ever one, but
no, but you have an address and a name that I can use later, right?
Yeah, you know where I live. I mean,
okay.
Never mind.
Yeah, never mind that. All right. Any last business, sir?
No, I've got none.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm glad to have shared that story because I'm glad to end on an up note.
All right. Well, then, I would suggest that if people would like to hear more of your amusing anecdotes and your gaming advice and that sort of stuff, that maybe what level pledge is it that allows them to join your Discord server?
What is it? It's $2 or more. $2 per article per month or more.
So for a mere $2 per article per month, you can get access to the Angry Discord server at his Patreon, and you can join in on not only his monthly chats, but also the occasional morning coffee, which is not entirely unlike this show. So that could be a thing you could do.
Mm-hmm.
I will link to your Patreon in the show notes.
And actually, I have just started live streaming video gameplay again.
I noticed that. I
So-
should link to your Twitch channel.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. And if you would like to, I don't know, I presumably have some sort of value I add to these things. You can
Certainly do.
You can get on my Discord for free at the time being. I will have a link to my Discord in the show notes as well, where I occasionally remember that I exist and then dispense some sort of information or discussion. I think last night we were talking about Ace Attorney.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, the video game series?
The video game series, but more importantly, the anime series.
Oh, wait,
It's-
they made an anime of that?
Oh, yes, they did.
Mm.
That's quite the thing.
Oh.
You wouldn't believe it. I've watched 21 episodes of it, and it has been quite the thing. In fact, it's kind of been anime week all over there, because I discovered that Funimation has a YouTube channel on which they will show an entire series of anime for free.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's that. I would also, if I were me, and I am me, I have a Ko-Fi page I would keep an eye on. Things are brewing there.
Ko-Fi?
Ko-Fi, yeah. You buy a guy coffee.
Oh.
I would keep an eye
Oh,
on
right.
there.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that.
Yes. That is something I would definitely pay attention to if you were interested in following me around. Other than that, I'm pretty sure I'm all done. We'll make goodbyes.
And, for everybody who did listen, and very much enjoyed this, and I know there were a lot of people out there who listened and enjoyed this. And we did get a lot of compliments too on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sorry that it has gone this way. And I really appreciate all the positive support and encouragement we've gotten. It far outweighed the negative support. But unfortunately, the reality is that isn't always enough. This is something that that I have to do for now.
Yep. Once again, as your friend, I would rather you be happy and healthy than be on a podcast with me.
Well, thank you. And I hope you and I will continue to speak on a weekly basis as best we can manage.
I hope that we will as well. So thank you, everybody who's listened, subscribed, rated, reviewed, done all the things we've asked you to do, enjoyed the program, shared it with friends, all that kind of stuff. Thank you very, very much. But I'm afraid we are, at last, genuinely out of time.